Hello and welcome to New Zealand. I'm Rowan and I'll be your tour guide today as we virtually take a trip around one of the most amazing countries in the world. Seriously, visiting New Zealand should be on everyone's bucket list. It's a beautiful country that has an incredible variety of landscapes and culture. My dad is from New Zealand actually, and both my brother and I are citizens of the country. My parents lived in New Zealand for many years together, and some of my extended family on my dad's side still lives there, which means that I've been on numerous family trips to visit the country. When I was 9, my parents packed up everything that they could fit into our family carry-on suitcases and took my brother and I on a massive cross-country road trip around New Zealand. We started on the North Island in Auckland, which is the largest city in the country and home to my grandparents. Then we worked our way down to Wellington, the capital city, and across to the South Island, where we spent weeks driving the length of the island and stopping in gorgeous little towns like Nelson and Motueka. Eventually, we ended up in Dunedin, where we lived for a few months. In all of my trips to New Zealand, I visited many of the typical tourist destinations and quite a few lesser-known places as well. I'm here to tell you about all the different places you can go in New Zealand and why you should definitely visit this country. Now, as a quick PSA before I get started, it's important to know that New Zealand is an island nation that is composed of two main islands, the North Island and the South Island. While it is easy to move between these two sections of the country, many people choose to only visit one island at a time. The North Island is more populated and touristy, while the South Island is more known for its wilderness and national parks. Because of this, I'm only going to focus on the North Island during this tour. I'm a bit more familiar with the places in this part of the country, and my most recent visits have all centered on the North Island because that's where my New Zealand family lives. Now, New Zealand is known for many things, including kiwis, sheep, and glowworms. I know that sounds weird, but Waitomo Caves is one of the best known places in New Zealand. These caves are located on the North Island near the village of Waitomo, and they're full of Arachnocampa luminosa, or glowworms. These worms use bioluminescence to glow in the dark and are actually the larval stage of a certain type of gnat that lives in New Zealand. When you visit Waitomo Caves, you walk through a small part of the cave system before coming out in the cathedral, which is the tallest chamber in the glowworms caves. Here you can see some of the glowworms hanging from the ceiling, although they're pretty translucent in the light. After going through the cathedral, you take a boat ride through what's known as the glowworm grotto. Here you sit in silence because glowworms don't like noise, and you stare in awe at all the thousands of pinpoints of light that are hanging from the ceilings and sides of the caves. It's a magical experience and unlike anything you can see anywhere else in the world. Now we're heading north to our next stop on the tour, which is the Bay of Islands. This area of New Zealand is more tropical and perfect for anyone who loves the beach and activities to do in the water. The Bay of Islands is a large bay area that includes 144 islands and multiple little towns and villages on the coast. It's about a 3-hour drive north of Auckland, which makes it a good place for a weekend trip. Many of the islands have walking tracks, and one of them also has a camping ground in case you want to stay overnight. Of course, there are many different boat tours that you can take throughout the bay. I recommend going to see the Hole in the Rock on Pierce Island, and going on a trip to see wild dolphins. Dolphins are a very common sighting in the Bay of Islands, and their playful personalities make them lots of fun to ride along with and follow in the bay. It's not uncommon for pods of dolphins to follow beside the boats and jump out of the water to show off. If being in the water isn't as much your thing, you can also visit the incredible Waipua Forest, which is home to a vast array of native flora and fauna, including the largest tree in the country, known as Tane Mahuta, or King of the Forest. Kauri trees, which is what Tane Mahuta is, are some of the largest trees in the world and are very distinctive because they maintain the same width of the trunk all the way up to the top, and they end in a conical top. You can drive up to the entrance of Waipua Forest, and a 5-minute walk in will bring you to the base of Tane Mahuta. This tree is estimated to be 2,000 years old, and it is still growing. The forest, and especially the kauri trees, are extremely impressive and will inspire awe in anyone who sees them. For the next part of the tour, we're traveling down south to Lake Taupo. There are two major places that you need to visit here: Huka Falls and Mine Bay Maori rock carvings. Lake Taupo is the largest lake in New Zealand, and it is the caldera of the Taupo volcano. This means that the lake is very deep, and it is actually so large that it has its own horizon, which is really cool. On the lake, there is a rock face that is only accessible via the water. On this rock face is a gigantic carving of a Maori face, which is known as the Mine Bay Maori rock carving. And the Maori people are the native people of New Zealand, and this carving is thought to be one of the greatest contemporary Maori artworks. It was made by the artist Matahi Brightwell, who is one of the last traditional Marae talk carvers. The carving is huge at 14 meters tall and is surrounded by multiple smaller carvings and sculptures that depict Maori ancestors and guardians. The carving is only accessible by boat, and you can choose to kayak, sail, or even take a private cruise to see it. I went on the sailing boat with my family, and it was an incredible experience. If you're lucky, the captain might even let you steer the boat for a few seconds like I did. Another must-see place in Taupo is Huka Falls. Remember, Lake Taupo is the largest lake in the country, which means that there's a lot of water being held in it. The Waikato River flows out of Lake Taupo and heads north, moving gracefully and calmly along until it reaches Huka Falls. Here, the river enters a narrow and shallow ravine, which concentrates all of the water into a much smaller area. This results in the previously calm waters crashing through the ravine and bursting out over Huka Falls. The falls are 11 meters high, and more than 220,000 liters of water tumble over them every second. The water is a beautiful crystal blue color, and you can barely hear yourself over the roaring of the falls. My dad and I hiked on the Spa Park to Huka Falls Trail, which is an hour-long hike that takes you along the top of the falls, that takes you alongside the calm river and up over the raging falls. There's even a footbridge at the top of the falls that allows you to stand right over the water and experience the full effect of having that much water rushing underneath you. If you want to get even closer to the falls, you can take a jet boat ride right up next to them. This was a little too much for us, but it was fun to watch the boat zooming up the river and going right next to the falls. Huka Falls will show you the incredible force of nature and water. It's a little scary, but also invigorating, and definitely an experience you won't forget. Now I'm taking you away from the wilderness and to New Zealand's largest city, Auckland. You can do so many things in Auckland, and I can't begin to cover all of them here. But of course, I do have some suggestions of must-see places. The first thing you'll notice when you go to Auckland is the Sky Tower. This is an iconic part of the city's skyline, similar to the Space Needle in Seattle. The Sky Tower is New Zealand's tallest building at 328 meters high, and it has incredible panoramic views of the city. When you visit the Sky Tower, you take a glass elevator up to the observation deck, which is an enclosed circular space at the top of the tower. The views are amazing, and the outer parts of the floor are glass, which means that you can stand on them and walk over them, and it's super thrilling to look straight down at the city laid out below you. You can also watch people doing the skywalk and the sky jump from the observation deck. These are two options for people who are seeking even more thrill from going to the Sky Tower. On the skywalk, you can walk around the exterior of the tower on a platform and enjoy the views from outside. You can take this one step further by doing the sky jump, which is a base jump off of the platform. No matter which option you choose to explore and experience the Sky Tower, you are sure to see amazing views and get some great pictures. The other place I recommend as a must-see in Auckland is Takapuna Beach. This beach isn't a known tourist attraction, but it is very popular with the locals. The beach is lovely, and from the shore you have an amazing view of Rangitoto Island in Auckland Harbour. This is a volcanic island that has been turned into an animal sanctuary, and it's beautiful. There are actually many beaches throughout Auckland, and if you have an extra day, I recommend packing a picnic lunch and going beach hopping. It's lots of fun to explore the local shorelines and find your favorite beach. And you can settle down for some food and a swim whenever and wherever you want. The final destination I have for you today is Wellington, New Zealand's capital city. Once again, there are many things you can do in Wellington, and I encourage you to explore the city on your own. In accordance with this, one of the first things I recommend doing in Wellington is simply walking along the waterfront. Wellington is situated on a harbor, and there is a wide footpath that runs along the length of the harbor and beyond. You can walk, ride a bike, or simply sit on a bench and watch the water. There are lots of little pieces of artwork along the walkway, as well as places to stop for a quick bite to eat. You can also see all kinds of wildlife in the harbor, including little blue penguins, which nest on the shore, fur seals, and sometimes even orcas and dolphins. The next place you should visit in Wellington is Te Papa, the National Museum of New Zealand. The full name of the museum, Te Papa Tongarewa, translates to Container of Treasures, which is a very accurate description for this place. It is far from a typical museum, housed in a beautiful and complex building and full of interactive exhibits. At Te Papa, you can learn all about the history of New Zealand, Maori culture, New Zealand art, and the unique flora and fauna of New Zealand. You can easily spend all day at Te Papa without even realizing it because you learn so much when you're there. Finally, I have to say that no trip to Wellington is complete without going on one of the iconic Wellington cable cars. You might have heard of the cable cars in San Francisco, and these are very similar to that. The cable car system started in 1902 in Wellington and has been going strong ever since. Locals use the cars to get to and from work, and tourists ride them up to the top of the route for some amazing views of the city. Taking the cable car is an essential cultural experience for Wellington, and of course it's a lot of fun as well. It appears that my time is up here, but I hope you enjoyed this tour of some of the most extraordinary places on New Zealand's North Island. The country is so beautiful, both in its wilderness and in its cities. From seeing dolphins in the Bay of Islands, to hugging massive kauri trees, to walking around the Sky Tower in Auckland, and everything else I talked about, I promise you will never be bored. I encourage you to plan a trip and visit as soon as you can, and I can't wait to hear about your travels and adventures in New Zealand. Thank you.